God gave John Paul the strength to be an unforgettable human being. Let us give thanks for the joy he spread his whole life long.
Everything bad that could have happened has happened. Except that.
How are you both doing today?
You know, we're good. We're here.
Good.
You're good and you're here, and that's great, and we'll chat. So, what was the show for each of you that got you through lockdown?
But I mean, there were loads of great shows, weren't there? My God, we were spoilt for choice. There was, I'm trying to think, what did I love? Was It's a Sin? Did It's a Sin come out during lockdown? I think it did.
Right at the start, yeah.
Yeah, that was one of them. I'd have to scrabble through my brain to go to because we all devoured television, right? And it's had such a powerful impact in terms of the amount of content that's being made as a result of the consumption during lockdown.
Yeah,
so much filming,
so much,
Yeah, because I, having watched this show the way I did, because we get to see some episodes in advance, obviously, to get to chat about it. But this is the perfect show for that weekly kind of cliffhanger, where you want to come in and talk to people at work the next day and be like, did you see, do you think, how do you think? Like, there's so many potential, even though you know the ending, it's so interesting that there's still a big mystery at the center of it, which is tremendous.
I know, and I'm glad it's not just going to be drop the whole season, you know, that they'll eke it out because of that very thing that you said. I was in America. I remember when the very last episode of Breaking Bad was being shown, and everybody everywhere I went was talking about it the day of and it the day after, and that's such a lovely thing. It really brings people together, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, yeah. But for this, I think one of the major talking points is going to be how the show manages to balance a very tricky line between comedy and drama, and your two characters are right at the center of that, obviously. How much work did it take for each of you to hit that balance correctly yourselves? Because if you go too far into comedy, it feels like you're making fun of a serious topic. But if you go too far into the drama, then it's not going to constantly be entertaining to watch.
I think that exactly as you say, this was at the core of what we were talking about all the time, balancing the relationship so that it had the right amount of everything. But mainly what we were very much conscious of was the fact that it had to feel true, and it had to feel lived in, and it couldn't be so far out that you'd be like, whoa, this is not real anymore. So it had to have that sort of, I mean, this guy had to be like so crazy and horrible, but still you had to make sure that it didn't seem as if Marie's character was just like a crazy person to stay there. I think this was actually basically what we were talking about all the time.
We were constantly having to have that
this balance.
Yeah, it was. But you know, I think ironically, we didn't have to be cynical about it. We kind of just played the truth of it. And then everything else kind of fed into that. Everybody else's reaction, in the same way that you don't play the king, everybody in the room plays the fact that you are the king, you know? So I think it was interesting. I think as long as we were kind of truthful, and because it was in the writing, if anything was funny, it was kind of just because it was in the writing, as opposed to having to make choices that lightened anything up. For us, we just played the truth of it and tried to sell the fact that there was love inside of all of this chaos. And then added on to that was the way the girls reacted, et cetera, et cetera. So it sort of happened by itself, if that makes sense, Rory.
Absolutely, yeah. Like
also, I think, I mean, that, you know, there were really good fun scenes in there.
Yeah.
I mean, we said that to each other. I remember a number of times. Oh, have you seen the new scenes? I mean, it's so. I mean, and if a situation and a scene is really well written and is you just want to dive in and you just want to do it. And so in that sense, that was sort of. I mean, it's perhaps a little bit arrogant to say it was easy, but if something is really appealing to you, you just want to get in there and And I felt that with a lot of the scenes that we had, that it was like, whoa, this is just so much fun to play around with.
I know, it seems crazy.
So yeah.
There are so many scenes in it where I related so much, because there is a particular Irish familial energy where, you know, on the one hand, yes, you all kind of a little bit hate each other, but on the other hand, you love each other so much that you will legitimately do anything. Yeah. Exactly. But
is that a typical Irish thing?
Oh yeah. It's love hate.
I'm learning stuff here. I thought I saw that everywhere. All right, good.
You know, like you could not speak to your sibling for a year, and then you'd be like, I have a problem, like, there in a second, what you need done.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But was there a first particular scene or particular day for you both when, because there's so many moving parts, there's so many performers, there's so many fantastic characters that need to be filled out, when that first scene for you both where you were like, oh yes, this is something special, because the energy in the room really felt like collectively it was as real as possible?
Well, we had a lovely chunk of rehearsal time, and during that rehearsal time, Duff Walsh, the director of the first block, had us all get into the costume and sit down and do a read through of the very first episode. And it was amazing, because you had all of the family, and then you had Daryl and Brian being incredible. I think that day, I don't know if you think that too, but I think that day there was a real sense of, wow, this is great, you know, because you could really feel people were really responding to us in our private moments, as well as laughing away, but they were like, wow, that's actually heartbreaking. Now I hear it out loud. That's actually heartbreaking. It's not just something on a page. And that seldom happens. You might, if you're in the theatre, you'd get that because you'd have a read through of a play. You don't generally get that so much in filming. So for me, I felt like if that's where we are under Starter's orders, you know, jeepers, we're in a really cool place, you know. So it felt like you had the family and then their family, and it just felt you felt that the invisible string between everybody, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree.
Claes, there's a particular word you use a lot in this show, the word Mammy.
Oh, yes.
Oh my goodness. It's not just the words, it's the inflection. It's how it's every single time, and every single time.
He would say it to me just when we were having a cup of tea.
But I had a full body reaction every single time you said the word. I was like, oh,
I'm sorry to hear that.
No, obviously that's how it's intended, is to completely.
I think actually what happened was that I was throwing mammies in everywhere. And at one point, some of the directors came and said, Claes, can you tone down the mammies a little bit? Can you just do 3 in this thing? Because I was like, everywhere. It was like anything I said, I'd throw in a mammy. Mammy, it's my coffee. Oh, my Lord. Yeah. And it's true. I even ended up calling Anne-Marie Mammy between takes. Yeah. Oh yeah.
I should have worn a t-shirt, shouldn't I, today? Yeah. I missed my opportunity.
I can see it becoming a t-shirt in its own right anyway. Just oof, well, like it was
amazing.
That would be the drag act for Grace, wouldn't it? She'd be Mammy.
Absolutely. That it was I can't overemphasize the physical reaction I had to it. So congratulations on that, first of all. But amongst your 2 characters, there's obviously some very serious like abusive issues in the middle of it, but there's also some, I don't want to say just purely funny acts of passive aggression, like the scene where you say, can you break in my new mountain boots?
Oh my Lord, that is my favorite line of the whole thing.
That's what I was going to ask.
I sometimes think about it and I start to giggle, and my wife goes, what are you giggling about? Yeah, I was just thinking about, you know, when I sort of say, can you just break them in, just wear them around the house? And, you know, just to have the idea, the image in my mind that Anne-Marie, as Mammy, is walking around the house in these shoes that are far, far too big. It's so silly. Yeah.
I know, she's brilliant, Sharon, isn't she? She's so clever.
But it's a tiny little thing, but it's like, it's awful. But I was cracking up laughing because I was like, how dare he? How dare he?
That's it. It's the gall of it, the constant gall of it, as well as us going, you know, oh, clearly this is domestic abuse, but it's so wittily executed.
Yes, and at the bottom of it is like, I'm just asking you to wear a pair of shoes is not really abusive, is it?
Yeah, exactly.
When you're delivering scenes like that, was there a particular one that was tough to do? Because selling that with a straight face, just wear those shoes, can't be easy. Like, was there a day where you were cracking?
we had a few of those, but this is definitely one of them. I remember, because this scene actually was something that we shot at the end of it. This was a scene that was added. Yeah. And we shot it in January this year or something, I think. Yeah,
really at the end of the
shoot. It was a scene that was, I think we needed a little bit more of this relationship in that episode. So this was added. And I just remember when it was sent to me, I was like, this is the funniest. I mean, because also at that point, we sort of knew the relationship really well.
So well.
So I was like, I mean, just the idea of being allowed to say that to you, coming up with the shoes, say, can you just break them in for me, please? Just wear them around the house. I was crying with laughter.
And that she would, so funny. And that she would. That's the thing.
And she probably did all her ironing and all her vacuuming and, you know, all her gardening.
Just one last question, if that's okay, because I am a huge fan of 30 Rock, and I know that the folks who were involved in that also co-wrote this with Sharon. When you get a script like this, which is, there's so much in it, like there's a scene even in I think it's the very first scene in the first episode where it's at the funeral and Sharon just shares a look with one of the sisters where it's like, what? And I was cracked up. I was laughing because I related to it so hard. But when you get that script, how much of it do you see on the page and go, oh yeah, that's spectacular? Or how much of it do you have to trust, knowing a lot of its energy will be brought to life once it's actually acted out?
Probably mostly in the script, and then that's just the icing on the cake. I mean, when I read, you know, coming from my background, that there was going to be a scene with egg and onion sandwiches in it, and knowing that nobody else would get that unless they have Irish family, you know, just things like that. You just go, oh yes, you know, it's just funny the wee things that jump out at you, isn't it? But I know what you mean. I think it's and Sharon's particular timing in terms of looks and things like that is extraordinary. I'd love to be able to do that. It's such a gift. It's so musical. So she's clever around things like that. And she'd tell you to do things and you'd be like, but I don't get it. And then when I see it, when I'm doing ADR or something, I go, oh, I see it now. Oh, it's that. It's very, very interesting. You know, it's just anybody who understands the musicality of comedy I find extraordinary.
Magnificent. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Dave.
You can't just explode a man. He thinks someone's trying to kill him. That's insane.